if you were around last month, you know that we spent some time during Black History Month talking about race and the church and the racial tension in our world. And as we, as a staff and lead team, were talking, you know, we realized that this month is Women's History Month. And as a church that is committed to proclaiming that every single person is created in the image of God, created equal in the eyes of God, and as a church that exists in the world where that is not true for everyone, we want to be a place that continues to raise up these values, to continue to talk about these issues, and to say that there is a way that is different. There is a truth that is different than the reality we live in. And today, we live in a world that we've come a long way when it comes to women's rights and equality, but we still live in a world where women are looked at as second-class citizens, where women are often considered property, where women are often considered spoils in war globally, where women still don't earn equal pay to men. And we believe that that is just counter to what God created our world to look like. Because all men and women were created equal in the sight of God, and both reflect the image of God. And so if we continue to treat one less than the other, it's an affront to God and his creation and his design. And so we want to be a place where we continue to talk about that, where we continue to encourage and raise up women who understand their full potential, who understand that they reflect the full image of God, just as men do. And so we wanted to take some time just to talk with some of the leaders of our own community, to talk about their experience within the church, to talk about their hopes for what the church can do to continue to promote gender equality. And so over the next couple of minutes, we're just going to have a conversation about that. And I'd love to invite our panelists out to come out and introduce themselves to you. Would you help me welcome them this morning? Well, good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Before we get started, I would love for you guys just to introduce yourselves and where you lead and serve within our church. So, Zoe.
Okay, my name is Zoe. I'm in the youth ministry. I'm a high school student, junior at Jones College Prep.
Hi, my name is Sarah. Okay, I'm competing with Zoe over here, but I'm a worship leader here at Willow.
Good morning, I'm Amy. I'm the family pastor here at Willow, Chicago.
Okay, I have a lot to follow. I'm Karen Strail. I sit on the advisory council here at Willow, and I volunteer on the count team.
Well, thank you guys so much or ladies, I'm going to say guys, I always say guys. But thank you so much for being here. We want to just talk about your experience within the church, because the church historically has been a place that hasn't always advocated for the equality of women, that has done some damage when it comes to how women view themselves within the church. And so, you know, we've come a long way, as I mentioned before, but I just want to hear a little bit about your experience in the church, if you grew up in the church, or what it's been like present day. So, Sarah, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, my experience was shaped by the Black church, and really watching my mom. My father is a pastor, and so my mom has assisted him my whole life. I've seen that. But she was the project manager, facilitating a move from one location that held 200 people to another church that holds 600 people. She was our financial advisor and officer, so all contracts had to go through her. And growing up in the Black church, I noticed that she was more of the rule and not the exception, that women were the backbones of the church. And so what I've noticed is that women were empowered to be executioners, to work in auxiliary roles, but they weren't invited to sit at the table with bishops and pastors and elders, people that really made the critical decisions as far as the direction of the church.
I guess for me, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. Both my parents were Buddhist, and so after much convincing my husband had me come attend Willow Easter of 2009. Which was very impactful, obviously. Haven't stopped coming since. But for me, I think when I first started attending Willow, it was very apparent that there wasn't anything blatant in my eyes where I could see an inequality, and that's really what encouraged me to continue to become an active member here. And actually, a lot of women within the church were the first to reach out to me and really invite me into groups and give me opportunities to lead, and that was very refreshing and battled a lot of stereotypes that I had in my mind before becoming an active member of Willow, so that was refreshing.
So I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I was amongst the first group of girls. They let me altar girls, and it was kind of cool to like be with the boys leading and helping in the Catholic Church. And then in high school, I started attending Willow Creek, where I was a volunteer. And so I kind of always grew up just thinking women lead and teach in the church. I never really thought twice about it until I got to Bible college and started to experience other Christian churches and saw that that wasn't true for all women in the church, that not all women had had the experience I had, where it was just natural for girls to lead and teach even from a young age. And so since then, I've kind of been having my eyes open, trying to reconcile this idea of how do women lead and teach in certain churches and not others, and what does that mean for our faith overall?
Well, my experience is obviously a little different because I'm a lot younger, but something that I feel like I've been very blessed with is I have a really great group of girls that I'm in contact with. We're kind of scattered all over the country, but we met at camp, and I think that it's really empowering to be in a group of girls, of Christian girls, of godly girls that want to build each other up. And, you know, we've really encouraged each other to accomplish things that we may not have otherwise had the courage to do on our own. And one of my best friends, she lives in California, she was very timid about her faith, and we all prayed for her, and we were in constant communication with her. And she actually just last year started the first FCA in her high school, and she said that I wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for you guys and you guys encouraging me. So I think that there's a lot of empowerment that comes from being in a group of girls like that, and I've definitely felt the benefits of that as well.
Yeah, I love that you talk about the community aspect, because here we believe that community is such a vital part of our growth and our transformation. And so what your community says to you, or how it speaks to you and how it encourages you or doesn't, can really impact your view of God and how you grow. I know that's been true for me, and even recognizing my own leadership abilities and feeling that that's okay to have that in the church, because it's so interesting for me. Growing up, I grew up in a church that really valued men in leadership, but I always thought I had some leadership ability, and that was always something I did in school or outside of the church, never really inside of the church, which, now that I look back, I'm like, oh, that's so sad that I felt that way, but I didn't view my faith connecting to that leadership ability that I had. I didn't see that as something God had given me, just something I could do outside. So how has your experience within the church really impacted your faith journey? What does that look like for you?
I feel like that it's still impacting my faith journey. I'm still, as Amy said, reconciling it, because subconsciously I feel that the community or the church told me that power equals male. And if God is all powerful, then God is male with masculine traits, and I'm not. And so where am I in God? But we see that the Bible says that God is a spirit. And so there are female attributes and male attributes that we find in God alike. And so I think that I just have to kind of really continue to educate myself and open my eyes and remind myself that femininity is power, that femininity is godlike. And that's what I'm still dealing with even now.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think it's something that you retrain yourself to believe. Yeah. What else? Who else?
Yeah, so for me, I'm always trying to, like Sarah said, just reconcile what does it mean to be a leader, what does it mean to be using my gifts and talents God's given me. And I feel closest to God, I feel most alive when I'm leading, and specifically when I'm leading within a church context. And so I only want more opportunities to lead, really, sometimes selfishly, in order to feel deeper communion and deeper connection with God. I believe that's who he's made me to be. And sometimes it is confusing within the church context to reconcile that with my faith, right? Like there have been times in my journey where I've said, God, why did you make me this way? Like, why did you give me these gifts to specifically lead within a church context, but then not provide the opportunities to do that? That feels kind of confusing and sometimes mean by God, but we know he's not mean, and so I trust that he's working it out for me, and as my life continues to unfold, I watch for opportunities where he doesn't leave me, and he provides more and more, and he says, Amy, I've made you this way, I affirm that, and I'm going to continue to guide you and give you opportunities within the church as you go.
I think for me, there's a lot of women and men that feel a natural calling to leadership, whether it be in your job or within your group of friends or in sports. And I personally have just always been somebody that's found myself in a role of leadership no matter where I'm at. But obviously not growing up in a Christian home, my faith journey has always been something that I kept completely separate. I thought it was something very personal and private to myself, and I didn't realize the leadership opportunity that I could hold within that faith side of my life too. So I would say that my experience with the women being so warm to me here at Willow and really empowering me to join leadership groups has helped me merge those two sides of my life into one, and helping me understand normalizing my faith in everything that I do in life. So.
Well, I'm also very blessed that I'm in a family where my whole family has always been really encouraging about being a leader in every context. And I think that something that's really unique about the church is that you're not defined by your gender, by anything other than your faith. You're here to praise God, and we're all together in that. And I think that in light of that, I've been able to embrace kind of the femininity and realize that you're not limited by it, that it's an empowering thing, and if you embrace that, it's even more so. Like, it's something that we can make a difference in the way that God has made us. We don't have to forsake that to make a difference. And I think that that's something that really unfolds when you dig into the Word of God and you realize the love that he has is unbiased, and it doesn't have anything to do with anything other than who you are and what you give to him.
Yeah, I think the church is such a beautiful place where you can see the attributes of God in both, and you see that working together. And I think that's how he intended it to be, that we would all work together equally, side by side, and that becomes this full reflection of who God is, not just to the church, but to the world, because the world struggles with this as well, as we know, as we look at statistics and just continued conversation. So when we think about the church, what do you hope, or what do you think that the church can do to really promote equality or gender equality in the world?
I think that the church has to first recognize that when we neglect women, when we ignore their voices, that we're not really reflecting the fullness of who God is, the fullness of his nature, the fullness of God's nature, even calling him him.
Yeah.
God is a spirit, but we've kind of indoctrinated to call God he. But we're not fully reflecting God's nature when we ignore women. And we have to remember that the church, we're equipping them to go to the world, to be cashiers and teachers and lawyers. That's who makes up our congregation. So when we empower them on this stage, they're also empowered in their workplaces as executives, as bus drivers, as mothers. They're empowered. And we're also training the men to recognize that this is normal. This should be the new normal, where women are respected and expected to lead in every aspect of life.
Chi-Chi, I love, you always ask us to ask the question, who's missing from certain conversations? And I hope just, for us as Willow Chicago, that we continue to ask ourselves that question all the time, who's missing in whatever spheres of influence we're a part of. And specifically when we notice there are women or young girls missing in something we're doing in the church or in our careers or in our personal lives, that we would say, I'm going to be an advocate. I notice that there's a woman missing in this setting and we need a woman, and I'm going to be an advocate and do something about that. And then, of course, I hope that the church could play a role in leading the way for our children, of course, right? I hope that specifically our church would be an example and a model and a light for our young girls and boys, and they would see that leading and teaching in the church is normal for anyone who has the spiritual gift, anyone that God has called to do that. And our kids would just grow up knowing that that's true and that they're expected to lead as well. So I hope we can do that.
And I would say, I hope the church continues to obviously empower people like Zoe. She's a great example of just youth seeing that opportunity and being called in to have opportunities like this to be on stage and show other girls that there's value in this. And I would also say for men, you still hold a very important role. So the church, to set an example for men, you know, if somebody has a platform, say you're a male CEO at a company, if that male lives out his faith and understands that equality, his concepts and his morals will filter through that entire organization. So I think it's really important that our men still understand their role in helping us get there, as well as empowering women.
I mean, going back to what I said before about how God's love is completely unbiased, and that, you know, we are expected to follow in the way that we love, in the way that he loves. And I think that that's something that's very evident in this church, is something that we say, you know, before every service, is like, this is a place of no judgment, and we're here to love everybody, and this is an accepting environment. And I think that once you embrace that and you realize that, you're able to experience your full potential in what you are and what God has made you to be. And I think that if we continue to live by that and we spread that love, you know, that is going to be something that's going to unfold in other areas of our lives as well, and that'll spread to the entire population, you know.
Yeah, I love that you bring in, you know, what we do on a daily basis, because we talk about these things, you know, and sometimes it seems like, oh, why are we talking about this in church? But the thing is, we're called to be a reflection of who God is to the world. And so if we're not constantly making that connection between what God has called us to do as followers of Christ and what he's calling us to do in the world around us, then we're missing out on a big part. That's how we become light in our daily lives and how we live and what we advocate for and what we believe in, allowing our values and our faith system to infiltrate what we do every day. That's the ballgame to me. Like, that's how we become light. That's how we change our world, when we don't turn that part of our brain off Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. It's all connected, you know, and God's calling us to see the beauty, to see the image of God in every person, every day, in all of our interactions, and to affirm that. And that's what I think our world really needs more of. So as we start to wrap up, is there any like final thought, anything that you would say to a woman out here today that, you know, just to encourage them to continue to engage in the gifts God's given them, or anything, final thing you would want to say to a man too out here as well? So I just want to give you the opportunity just for a closing thought.
Something came to my mind. I think it's really important that women also support other women. I feel that environments of inequality cause a dog-eat-dog kind of world, and we feel that we have to compete against one another, but we're only going to succeed and move great strides towards that goal if we help support one another. So please encourage your other women to keep trying.
And I think along with that we remind ourselves that we are image bearers. Because sometimes I could be my own worst critic. Like, am I equipped to do this? Do I have the power or the know-how? But we do have that power. God has given it to us, and we have to walk in confidence that, yes, if we get support, but we have to be able to really see ourselves as an image of God.
If you're a woman sitting here today and you've received messages growing up from the church or from the world that you weren't good enough or equal enough to others to lead, I just want to encourage you today to consider a new way moving forward. If you have a sense that God has given you leadership and that's to be used here in the church or in the world, I just encourage you, maybe today would be like a moment marker, and you would say, I'm going to explore this and try to figure this out with all of us. We're all trying to figure it out. but that today maybe would be a moment that you would move towards something new and using the gifts God has given you to really contribute to something great.
Something that the youth pastor, Miss Elena, said was that a lot of the action and energy from a church starts from the youth. And I think that, I mean, not to sound cliche, but like, don't be afraid to get involved, and you can make a difference. And you know, I think if we start raising our boys and girls to just go out and be difference makers with that kind of mentality, that it's going to make a change. And you know, I've seen it in so many areas. So like I said before, one of my closest friends, she's completely changed her community. And you know, everything starts from a micro level. It's not like everyone, you know, you're exempt from something because you're a man or you don't, or because you're younger. It's like everyone is in this race together, and we need to be supportive of each other.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, ladies. I love just the message of, you know, we need everyone in this. You know, no one group can do this alone, that we all need to support each other to believe what God has said about us, so that we can see true change in the world. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Can you thank our panel for us this morning?